All right, we're going to welcome everybody to another episode of Truth Seekers. We have John Rennie joining us. We will introduce him shortly. We just want to let everybody know you can find us at proadvisorcoach.com and anywhere you watch your podcast. We're everywhere you can think of. We're on Anchor, we're on Podbean, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts. I'm probably missing some, but wherever you watch your podcast, look for Truth Seekers with Josh and Nick. You may notice as we get started here that it isn't Josh and Nick, it is Josh and John. We have John filling in and co-hosting today. So John, appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to introduce John. He's got a super interesting background. I love his approach to business. He identifies himself as an entrepreneur, and I would like to welcome John to the episode.
Hey, good to be here.
So John, I want to jump right in. I know that you do a lot around the topic of leadership. I believe you host your own podcast. How did you get to where you are today? What has made you you?
Well, I started my career as a naval officer on a nuclear submarine, which is a very unique way to start a career. So I had got an engineering degree. I spent 5 years in the Navy. I made 7 deployments on the USS Tennessee towards the end of the Cold War. And then I got out of the Navy and I went into business, and I ended up leading 9 different manufacturing businesses throughout my career, including my own business now. I started about 5.5 years ago called Peak Demand. So I've been running that for almost 6 years now. So I guess I started in the Navy and I just continued in corporate America and then eventually became an entrepreneur. So I've been in leadership for more than 30 years and I absolutely love it. I love people. I love getting the most out of people and helping people become the best versions of themselves.
That strikes a chord so much with Coach John and I, because that's what Pro Advisor Coach is all about. We take, it's people first, always. It's all about people, no matter what that is, satisfying our clients' needs, keeping them happy, wowing them, but also our employees. We want full engagement and people to be aligned with purposeful work and be aligned under a common mission and vision to achieve things that make a difference in the world. And we can have the best of that world along with structure and goals and process and procedure. And I'm curious, how much of your background has played a role in your management style or your entrepreneurial style, if you don't mind, maybe starting there.
Yeah, I think it really did. It actually, probably in the last 10 years, I realized what a unique background I had being a submarine officer, because, and that really formed a foundation for my leadership and what I've done over the years. And part of the reason was we were, when you're on a submarine, you work in close proximity to everybody because it's so small, right? So you got to know your people intimately, right? And it was always about not just the mission, but the people, right? So our job was to, conduct a very serious and difficult mission, but we also had to make sure that everybody came home safe. So I think from that point on, I was always about mission and people, and that's what I did throughout my entire career. And what I found was that was actually rather unique, because not all leaders think about the people. They think about the mission maybe, and a lot of times it's because it's tied to a bonus check or tied to an advancement or something like that. But what I found is if you just take care of the mission and the people and you do it for the right reasons, in other words, just, not to get the next promotion, but to, be a successful organization, I found that works much better.
That's awesome. Coach John and I have a lot of conversations actually of the way we make sense of this is above and below the waterline. So if you think of an iceberg, right? Everybody's got an iceberg example, but above the waterline is those very tangible goals, things we're looking to achieve. But of course, the below the waterline is a much bigger portion, the psychology, our mindset. And I think that plays the proportion of, the importance of where we are below the waterline. So just wanted to ask Coach John, how do you make sense of that? And what sticks out the most to you about what John is mentioning?
Yeah, well, I like what you're saying. I was in the corporate world for 34 years as an executive, and I realized that the only way to really effectively lead people is to manage the person, not really manage them, but care about the person, not the tasks. Everybody knows how to do the task, but when their minds get in the way, they don't do it because they don't feel appreciated or whatever it is they're going through. So if you just care about them as people, it kind of works out for itself. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of times they call it the soft skills, right? You go to business school and they teach you accounting and they teach you marketing and sales and they teach you ethics and law, right? They teach you the hard skills because that's really what's important. But you don't walk away with an MBA in most cases. There are some exceptions with any, but most cases you don't walk away with any leadership skills whatsoever. So you have all these. You've been told your whole life that it's all the hard skills. But what you mentioned, Josh, was below the waterline are the soft skills. It's people. It's you can't accomplish anything without people. And I think that that's really my message. It's a great story. If you've ever watched the commissioning of a ship in the Navy, and I'm a sucker for Navy tradition. I just love, seeing all the pomp and circumstance and all the history. But when they commission a ship, it's a pretty amazing ceremony, but they usually have a ship sponsor. So I was watching the USS Gerald R. Ford, which is an aircraft carrier, and they went through a commission, and they have a sponsor. In this case, it was President Ford's daughter was the sponsor. And the order she gives is pretty amazing. She says, man the ship and bring her to life. And I really, that's really struck me when I was sitting there watching that ceremony. I thought, you know what? That ship is just a cold hunk of steel sitting in the harbor until you put people on it. Until you man that ship, you bring it to life. And it's the same thing with our businesses, right? It is nothing. Our business plans, our strategic plan, our vision, it is absolutely nothing without people. Our people bring our plans to life. Our people bring our businesses to life. And I really like that analogy, the Navy analogy, because it really has a great visual. And it's a tradition that's been going on for more, for 200 years. We've been commissioning ships that same exact way. Bring it to life with people.
Love that.
Coach, I saw you make a note, Coach. What did you write down, if I can ask?
I wrote down, man the ship, bring it to life. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
I like that quote because it does apply to all of the teams that we coach. They're trying to create a high performing team.
Yeah.
And if you really take that quote to life, you realize it's the responsibility of the leader to bring it to life.
Yes, exactly.
Right? I have a question for you, John.
Sure.
And that is about the self-awareness of a leader
Mm.
and how leaders, when they're not self-aware, they can have some type of pattern or habit that affects the entire team and they're oblivious to it. They think their team is acting however irresponsible, but they're not aware that they're doing it because of the way they behave.
Sure.
Can you give me an example of how you deal with that?
Well, no, this is a really big problem. It's funny because all these, there's been 15,000 books written on leadership, right? And who reads it? They're good leaders read books on leadership. It's the people that are not self-aware. It's always been a struggle with me when I write about leadership, talk about leadership, is how do I reach the people that need the message the most, right? The people that, understand what I talk about. When I tweet something like bad bosses lock themselves in their offices and they don't spend time with their people, I have all these people say, yes, that's exactly right. Well, these are the self-aware leaders, right? They already understand that. The question is, how do you get to the people that are not aware? And here's part of the problem is, in typically in corporate America, and you spent many years there, so is that if you're a great individual contributor, right, or you're the senior person in the department, a lot of times you get promoted to management just because you might be a good individual contributor or you might be senior, right? But nowhere in that time do they give you truly leadership training, because your role changes when you become a leader. No longer is it you're the best accountant in the group or you're the best engineer in the group or the best salesman. You're responsible for leading the people on that team. It's a big difference, and it's a shift, and many people don't make that shift.
So John, maybe this is something you may have touched upon in your own podcast, but what might be some signs, we talk about good leaders and people who don't know that they need the leadership books yet. What about those people on the fence who are just kind of discovering this and just entering into that awareness phase? How can they self-identify? What might that look like for them?
So, I had a great question. I teach a lot at graduate school level. I come in, I do leadership sessions with some of the grad students I've got a session with Duke University here coming up. But that was a great question I had from a young student. She said, I'm a new leader. How do I know if I'm good or not? And I gave her this answer. I said, When you walk up to a group of employees, what do? Do they all shut up and look the other way or change the subject? Or do they say, hey, John, how you doing? We were just talking about a way that we can improve, whatever. I mean, just how your employees react when you walk up is a really good indicator of how you're doing as a team. So if they all change the conversation, or if they're surprised to see you, or they don't roll their eyes or whatever, but it's really, how do your people respond when you first walk up to them is a really good indicator of how you're doing as a leader. I really think that's a good example.
Yeah, it's the eye test, right? You get immediate feedback right away with how people think of you, and that's
right.
Yeah.
And sadly, and you got to have, I don't know this, it's a soft skill, but I'll say it. You got to have a little bit of empathy. You got to be able to be in your employees' shoes. And I see so many leaders that get up and they'll do a talk, and you can clearly look around the room and nobody's listening, nobody's paying attention, everybody's rolling their eyes. And that leader will still keep talking and read their PowerPoint slides, and no one's engaged, nobody cares. And that person is not self-aware enough to know that nobody cares. So part of it is, just, use your eyes, use your ears, you listen, watch, look at people's reactions. I mean, is that empathy? I don't know, but it's, these are tools to help you become more effective as a leader, is watch what's happening with your people. The old phrase, like, you're not, one way to tell if you're a leader is to turn around to see if anyone's following you, and I think some leaders, they march along and no one's following them. They're off in another direction, or another problem too is that many leaders are isolated, right? So they stay busy in their offices. So they go to conference calls and they go to and they have meetings, and they find ways to, or excuses to be busy, because a lot of times they're afraid to get out and be with their team, because they are afraid of what those employees are actually going to say, or what the real story is out there. They pretend that everything is fine, and they try to control the message to their boss, and they don't want anything that's messy. And you know what? People are messy, and that's, if you don't want to be involved with people, in the messiness of people, don't be a leader. Stay in your individual contributor role, because people are messy and they're going to do strange things, but you have to just embrace it, love it, and that's part of being a leader.
Love it.
Yeah, I see a lot of head nods from you, Coach John. What are you picking away? What resonated the most with what he was saying?
No, it's so true. As a coach, I've learned that it's the value of a leader is the same as a coach. It's, your people want to do good. Your people want to achieve whatever their goals are, but they might not know how, and they might be embarrassed. And you need to get that stuff out in the open, in order for them to really get real and deal with the truth. And once they're open enough, then they can, oh, okay, I need to work on this. How do I learn this? But if they're afraid of those perceived difficult conversations, they're really not difficult. They're just kind of being you.
Right. Absolutely.
It's getting rid of that fear. And I think it starts with the leader. If the leader is afraid to have an authentic, intimate dialogue, then you know what? His leadership team is going to reflect that right back to him. Yeah, absolutely. It's important to get out there. I'll tell you, I ran one plant. It was a heavily unionized plant up in Pennsylvania. And the union and management never got along. There was an animosity between the two. And I came in as a fairly young vice president, general manager. And I walked the shop every day. And every day I get the same guys that just wanted to give me crap. I remember one guy telling me we had bought a brand new piece of equipment and we had temporarily placed it in one area of the plant until we could replace the piece of equipment. And I was walking by and he says, John, I got to talk to you about something. I said, okay, what do you want to talk to me about? He says, that piece of equipment over there. I said, yeah, it's going to be a new line for you. He's like, yeah, but where you put it, it's in my way. So I have to walk around it every day when I go to my car at the end of the day. And, it's just like, okay, but instead of saying like, thanks for buying a new piece of equipment, it's going to make my job easier. It's like, you put it in my way, and I have to walk around it every day. So you're going to get some guys like that, and that's okay, but you got to be out there. You got to have
You got to have thick skin. I talk about that in my new book about one of the things about being a submariner is you had to have thick skin because, people were going to, your colleagues wanted to know if you were going to be strong when things got tough, right? And so they were always testing us and trying us to make sure we had thick skin. And I think part of being a leader is to have some thick skin and not be so sensitive when somebody says, hey, you put this piece of equipment in my way. You just smile and you just move on because it's just someone having a bad day. So
Have you seen that series on Apple TV called Ted Lasso?
I have not. No.
Oh my God, what a great testimony of what you're just saying. He's always spinning the negativity into a positive.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a great role model. Check it out.
I will. Absolutely.
So, John, you mentioned a book. I want to give you an opportunity to share what you've been working on. And it just was released recently. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah. So a couple of months ago, we released a new book called All in the Same Boat. And it's a really fun book. It's filled with stories from my days on the boat, on the submarine, and how I took those lessons and applied it in business. So there's more than 50 short stories in the book, which are kind of grouped around different lessons. And so I tell, usually 4 or 5 sea stories, as we call it in the Navy, and then I would tell a couple of business stories, how I related or took that technique and used it in the business world. So, my first book I wrote, it's called Eye of the Watch, and a lot of people said, I love the book, but I want to hear more sea stories. So this new book is sort of an answer to that request from my readers. They wanted to see more sea stories. So there's a lot more sea stories. So if you're mildly interested in what life is like on a submarine, this is a fun book. If you want to learn some leadership lessons and have a few laughs along the way, this is a great book. So it's entertaining, it's educational, and it's a fun book. And it took me 2.5 years to write. And it was a lot of fun to put together. And I'm really, really proud of it. It's something that I've worked hard on, but it's just a lot of people read it and they just love the stories, and each story resonates with different people depending on, what their leadership situation is like.
Super cool.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in embracing our experiences, right? And when you can harness that, you probably didn't know at the time you're going through those things, decades ago, that you'd be writing a book about it. So how funny, that's the value. And I think about how you started, that you've run, did you say 9 manufacturing companies?
Yes, I'm on my 9th. So hopefully this is my last one if I keep this business going. So
well, I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, so what are some of the lessons from those businesses, and how have you turned that into what you're doing today? I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your current business.
Yeah, so I got an opportunity early. I actually talk about it in the new book. I don't know, you guys know Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoon guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he wrote a book called something like how to win, how to fail at everything and become successful, something like that. It's a great book. But in that, he talks about talent stacking. And that's something I did early in my career. I didn't know it was called that at the time, but I called it, in the book, I call it skill stacking. But what I was able to do early in my career is stack a number of different skill sets. Like, okay, I had past leadership experience. I had engineering experience. I had QA experience. I was able to stack all those up and got a chance to run a plant at just 32 years old. I was promoted to running a manufacturing plant in South Carolina. And I will tell you this, that's still one of the best jobs I ever had in my life, because it was fairly small, maybe 130 employees and maybe 40 million in revenue. It was really easy to get your hands around. It was really easy to know all the employees. And it was really easy to make a lot of mistakes and learn along the way. And so that was my playground, if you will, to learn leadership and learn it at a bigger scale, if you will. And we were very successful in that plant, and a lot of it was people. So I spent a lot of time on the shop floor. We implemented a program there, which was fun. It was called Fridays on the Floor, because one of the things I noticed right away, the contrast between the Navy and corporate world, is that we were separated. In the corporate world, the white collar was over here, the blue collar was over there. And the only thing we had was maybe shared break rooms or shared bathrooms, but everything else was separate. Whereas in the Navy, we all worked together. We'd spend 6 hours standing watch together. So one of the things I said was, how do we bring these teams together? And one of the things I started doing was started like first Friday of every month, I'd work 4 hours on the shop floor. It was sort of like Undercover Boss, that show, but I would do it. This was long before Undercover Boss ever came out, but I would work 4 hours every month in a different place on the shop floor. And I was learning all this great stuff. I was seeing things for the first time. I was learning things. I was building relationships, right? But and to come back and I'd gather the management team, I'd tell them everything I learned, and I noticed that they weren't as enthusiastic about it. So we rolled it out to the entire management team that everyone would go in a different place on the shop floor every first Friday of every month for 4 hours. And then we'd come back to the conference room, we bring in pizza, and we talk about what we learned. And it was almost like someone gave us the answer to the test we were all taking. It was like all the answers were right there. And the employees built relationships with management. Management built relationships with employees. We built mutual respect. We learned from each other, and we implemented these ideas. And management, the employees saw management as being actively involved in their lives, and we were actively involved with their lives. The conditions got better, productivity went up, sales went up. We won all sorts of awards. We were actually runner-up for the Manufacturer of the Year in South Carolina. We were hoping to win that, but I was still proud to just be nominated and be on that list. But we did a lot of great things there. And I think that was where I got a chance to really see how these things can work in real time in a big environment. And from there, I just went into multi-plant leadership and what have you. But that first plant was really where I cut my teeth and really had a lot of fun with those employees and really spent a lot of time on the shop floor. Even today, if you saw I'm not in my office right now at work, but if you saw my work boots, I spent a lot of time on the shop floor. My boots don't look like somebody who has got a CEO title. It looks like someone who spends time on the shop floor, which I do. So
maybe another indicator in the answer to the question, what does leadership look like, or how can we know? Well, how dirty are your boots?
Yeah, no, seriously, how dirty are your boots? I think that's a really good example of are you getting out? Are you spending time with your employees? I always say, the best information you're going to find is in the break room, not the boardroom. And I think we don't spend enough time. If you know lean manufacturing, there's a thing called Gemba. Gemba is the real place, right? And the real place is where most of your employees are working. It's where value is added. So it could be a call center. It could be, if you're in a school, it's where your teachers are. If you're in a plant, it's where your manufacturing resources are. And that's where Gemba is. And we don't spend enough time as leaders in Gemba. We like to be behind our desks or just in a protected tower somewhere. We don't want to get down and dirty where our people are. But that's where we need to be, not in our tower. And some people say, well, I'm too busy as a leader. Well, guess what? Once you become a leader, you're no longer a doer, you're a leader, and you've got to make that shift. And if you're too busy, you're an ineffective leader. So I think that's, and I talk about that in the first book a lot, about the busy leader and how problematic that is.
That's what resonates the most with me is oftentimes being a better leader doesn't mean doing more. It means being more strategic about who you're spending your time with, or the pillars in which you spend your time. And a lot of that comes with, as Coach John might attest to, just being vulnerable. And you being vulnerable allows or gives the freedom to your employees to be vulnerable. So that's something that's resonating with me today. I kind of want to go around. John, we'll give you the last word here. But Coach John, what might you be taking away from today's conversation? What's a principle that, either is a reinforcement of something that has been prevalent in your coaching practice, or what are you taking away from today?
Just kind of walking in the shoes of your employees and giving them an opportunity to share without that, kind of, I'm up here, you're down here. We're on the same level. I picture the submarine, and you don't have the ability to be up here.
No.
You're on the same floor, and it forces you to be intimate.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I'm taking away from this is provide some structure that makes sure you can have that intimacy with your employees so they share what you need to know and you develop a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I named the latest book All in the Same Boat, because whether you like it or not, you're all in it together. And you can say, well, I'm in management, I'm going to be okay, or I don't have to follow these rules or whatever. No, that's not it. You're all in it together. Every employee is important to your operation. We just have different roles to play. And the leader is no more important than the person on the call with the customer. In fact, I would say the person on the call with the customer is more important than the leader. So, and I think that's in that kind of mindset is different. We like, we celebrate in America the big egos and the big, the big salaries and the guy with the fancy suit and fancy car, and that's not really what people need. They need somebody who can be at their level, listen to them, talk to them, hear their ideas, interact with them, and help them achieve what they want in their life. If you can figure out a way to align an individual's goals towards the goals of the business and fit them in the right place, you're going to be much more successful than you have people in jobs that they're not happy with and they're miserable and so I think you can help people achieve, be the best versions of themselves and accomplish the company goals at the same time, I believe.
I believe that too. Anything is possible. We have to operate from that basic belief system, or else what's the point, right? Like, why are we doing things? We want the ultimate fulfillment, but also results in our business. And I think that's what this podcast is all about. So, John, we'll give you the last word. Anything you would want people to know about your business, or a principle that's reinforced for you today in today's conversation? How do you want to leave off today?
Well, I would say this is that, and if you follow my, I have a podcast called Deep Leadership, and one of the mantras is that leadership is a people business, and that's kind of my tagline, if you will, my catchphrase. But at the end of the day, we forget that leadership is a people business. So I just remind everybody that it's all about the people. Leadership is a people business. If there were no people, you wouldn't be a leader. You'd be an individual contributor. So always remember that, and if you focus on that, you'll do fine. And so again, I've got you can follow my podcast at Deep Leadership, but also go to my website johnsrennie.com, and you can pick up any of my books. Got a blog out there, and I actually do 2 podcasts too. I do one called The X Factor as well. So, but be happy to talk to anyone about leadership, or if you're going, especially new leaders, if you got a question, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome, John. Thanks so much. We're going to feature all that in the comments and the show notes. So for anybody who wants to check out more, please look below. John, just want to thank you for joining this week's episode. We'll see you next week.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.